So, in the middle of Book 4, Plato's city-soul analogy is complete. His city is made up of three parts: the rulers, the guardians or auxiliaries, and the producers. The soul is made up of three parts: the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive. Each has its own part to play, and each has its own corresponding virtue. The the virtue of the rulers and of the rational part of the soul is reason. The virtue of the guardians and of the spirited part of the soul is courage. The virtue of the producers and of the appetitive part of the soul is moderation. But Plato thinks there's one virtue left over: justice. So, what is justice? Justice is the balance or harmony that results when each part of the city or the soul does its own work well and doesn't meddle with the other parts. He says this beginning at 433. Then listen and see whether there's anything in what I say. Justice, I think, is exactly what we said must be established through the city when we were founding it, either that or some form of it. We stated, and often repeated, if you remember, that everyone must practice one of the occupations in the city for which he is naturally best suited. Yes, we did keep saying it. He continues on. This goes on for a couple of pages. At 434b, he says, look, I think you agree about these exchanges, and this sort of meddling brings the city to ruin. Absolutely. Meddling and exchange between these three classes, then, is the greatest harm that can happen to the city and would rightly be called the worst thing someone could do to it. Exactly. And wouldn't you say that the worst thing that someone could do to a city is injustice? Of course. Then that exchange and meddling is injustice, or to put it another way around, for the money-making auxiliary and guardian classes each to do its own work in the city is the opposite. That's justice, isn't it? And makes the city just? I agree. Justice is that and nothing else. This continues all the way through 435c and really is repeated throughout the dialogue. This idea that justice is a kind of balance or harmony that results when each part of the city or the soul does its own work well and doesn't meddle with the other parts. So I'm going to be asking you to weigh in a little bit on your idea of, your ideas about Plato's account of justice and whether you think it's a good one. I think it's really interesting. You know, in the West, most of us have grown up with a dualism. That is there's good and evil. There's righteousness and there's sin. But Plato doesn't look at things that way. Look, the appetitive part of the soul is not evil. The part of the soul that wants food and drink and sex and thrills, that's not an evil part of the soul. It just needs to be kept in moderation. It just needs the rational part to lead. If the appetitive part leads the soul, then we're going to have a chaotic, out of control soul. We need the rational part of our soul to lead, and the spirited part, that part that wants to exemplify honor and nobility and courage, that part, the spirited part, needs to help the rational part to enforce its rules. And the same thing in the city. That's what justice is, he thinks, right? The ruler's job is to rule, and the guardian's job is to help enforce the rule, and the producer's job is to be moderate and to enjoy their repetitive pleasures in moderation and not to meddle in the job of the rulers. Um, I want to know what you think of Plato's Callipolis and what you think of his notion of justice. It's very interesting to me. I'm in certain ways very drawn to his idea of the good as a kind of balance or harmony where, you know, our desires are not wicked. Our repetitive desires for food and sex and drink and thrills, these things are not wicked. They just can't lead, right? They need to be kept in check. They need to be kept in moderation. We need Mardi Gras, but it can't be every day. And a city, a city needs uh, Jim Morrison. A city needs. Trying to think of some newer. City needs Post Malone. A city needs uh, you know uh, wild and crazy rule breaking people, but it can't be all those sorts of people, right? We can't have a police state, but we can't have chaos either. We need a balance. We need a harmony. That's what we need. Um, and I wonder what you think about this. I'm excited to hear what you have to say in the discussion boards that's coming up.